hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ya hey yo hey yo hey yo hey ha ya hey ya ya hey ya hey yo hey yo hey yo hey ha ya 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 hey ha yo hey yo hey yo Fort Beck Community College Uki Epino yo yo me too gashi dagush kashka yogi piano yo yo wata pepe hagi ktabi ihachi ya bino hey yo hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ya hey yo hey yo hey yo hey ha ya hey ya yo hey ha yo hey yo hey yo hey ha ya hey ha hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ha ya hey yo hey yo hey yo Fort Beck Community College Ugi Epino yo yo me too gashi dagush kashka yogi piano yo yo wata pebi hagik tabi ihachi ya bino hey yo hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ya hey yo hey yo hey yo hey ha ya hey ya yo hey ya hey yo hey yo hey yo hey ha ya hey ha hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ha hey yo hey yo hey yo Fort Beck Community College Uki Epino yo yo me too gashi dagush kashka yogi piano yo yo wata pebi hagik tabi ihachi ya bino hey yo hey yo hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ya hey yo hey yo hey yo hey ha ya hey ya hey ya hey yo hey yo hey yo hey ha ya hey ha hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ha hey yo hey yo hey yo Fort Peck Community College Uki Epino yo yo me too gashi dagush kashka yogi piano yo yo wata pepe hagik tabi ihachi ya bino hey yo
Oh, mitakuipi. Ke iushke wa chiankampi. Dayan wa chiakapi do. Elijah Hopkins demie wana wa chinja wa kapa won't spell kantu ya dechia Dayan ya hipido mitakuipi. Hello, relatives, again, and welcome to the Buffalo Chasers podcast. We're at week number 43, I believe. Thank you for joining us again here today. Um, joined again with Dekshi. Mr. Tommy Christian is in the house. So I want to thank him for joining us again. Uh, before we get carried away too much further along, Dekshi, could we start off with a prayer? Could you share with us in a good way?
Oh, hey, to la wupila chicha, tuska, daya chano, yao stel. How me taki epi daya, hipi ushimalo chewi chachamialo, hohe chajemi tau amnisha ke toba ima chiapi. Ushimalo, omakiana wa chikia, tante waste, ambetu kile, omakia. Hatukashila na wakanka gata teoria toba unchi makana makaina. Naku mitaki epi wanagi makpea kta, Ushia ke mitaki epi hoto ka kta hiopo, nito pe, ushmano wo mitaki epi naha omnicha heta naha owi chaki apo, ushibi chalapo. Fixiapo mitaki epi winuksalapi, wichakshalapi, wakainjapi, hokshilapi, unchinchalapi, koskapi, we koskapi, chanku washte unk upi, wichozani unk upi owi chaki apo, ushibi chalapo. Atu kashila wakantanka Dixiapo mitaki epinagichita oyate kizuya ekta wichasha bele wiapile chanku ashte upi owichaki apo ushu chalapo. Ake atukashila wakantanka oyate oyasi chanku luta aga omani owichaki apo ushu wichalapo. Atukashila na wakantanka dixiapo mitaki epinaha wayaza api uchi makao mani na chante yoksicho mani owichaki apo ushu wichalapo. Che wichasha mielo Ushiake mitaki epi ambe tukile. Oh, mitaki oasi.
Pinamaya, Dixie, beautiful prayer again. So I guess if you're new to the podcast or if you're an old vet, we try to do our weekly drawings. And so for the week 42, the drawing winners for our Cho FPCC jacket, the winner of that is Maureen Greyhawk.
Yay!
We also have a Kindle Fire up for grabs, and the winner of that is Joey Youngman.
Congratulations,
Joey and Maureen. You can redeem those prizes at the War Eagle Vision building at Poplar Main Campus, or give us a call, 406-768-6300. We can mail out your prize there to you wherever you're at. So again, congratulations to Maureen and Joey. So Dekshi, we again, week 43, Buffalo Chasers podcast. Kind of a lot going on. But as you already know, but for our viewers, mental health is kind of, we're always trying to have good, healthy discussions, and individuals like you and Dekshi Earl are always sharing a lot of good things, always getting a lot of awesome feedback. So whatever you want to share with us, that would be good. Whatever you want to discuss.
Oh, Toshka. My relatives, Ushimala, Chewichamelo, a lot of the stuff that we share on our page here on our podcast, again, it's shared from a perspective in which we understand it. It's not the way or the only way, or it's a way, to think about things. And again, we try to address those in a good way to help us understand the predicament, if you will, of what we're involved in now as it relates to COVID and some of that collateral damage it's doing to our people and our relatives. And we found it necessary to really try to collaborate with other people, to get involved and maintain some sense of communication with with all of our folks out there, especially our students. And so we developed this little podcast here, and we refer to it as reestablishing the Buffalo Chaser Society. So as we do these things, we did a little thing for AICF on a youth gathering that they had, and I listened to it the other day. Oh, we did pretty good. We explained without being too presumptive in our manner as it relates to telling people what to do, but just helping them understand that there's options out there that's available to them, and how they can enlighten themselves, enrich themselves, and really expand their worldview as it relates to the diversity that we speak about. And of course, then the uniqueness that's applied through our language and through our ceremony and through following our protocol that we wish and hope that it becomes an enhancement and enrichment for the sake of the growth of our children. And again, yeah, as redundant as we sound when we keep saying that, it's for the sake of our future, which our children or our young people represent. So with that all being said, there's a gathering that we just kind of delved into last week as it relates to what Nietzsche Ole Chiemita, what he was speaking about is the songs, the drum, and various things like that, and how it applied. Well, there's a contemporary way of celebrating life that we, as First Nations people that are indigenous, where we can really help ourselves understand how strong we're becoming as it relates to that character development, trying to exercise those virtues. And that celebration of life is referred to as powwow. Like the definition of powwow, like a lot of people mock it and make fun of it. Let's go have a powwow over here. In other words, they're talking about a meeting. They want to get together and have a meeting or whatever they want to talk about. And thugs, they say, we're going to have a powwow, and there you can get together. Well, we like to make us understand that we refer to it as a wachipi, where we get together and we enjoy ourselves, enjoy our company, share stories of old, let them know what's going on currently and what our thoughts are of the future, what we wish to aspire to in the future, kind of that communication sort of thing, and hopefully we can get back together and do that again as it was intended initially. There's a lot of things that are going on. We were denied the opportunity to gather like that for a whole year. We couldn't have powwow, and in that time, you see a lot of people yearning for powwow. Oh, when the powwows come back, I'm going to dance every intertribal. I'm going to come in grand entry strong. I'm going to have all my regalia together and have it all in place and all that good stuff. And oh man, they were just making all kinds of commitments and promises. And then I watched a couple of powwows on YouTube, and yeah, okay, yeah. I'm glad you felt that way back then. Gixiapo mitake epi. Remember what you were saying back then, and then as it relates to coming into a gathering like that, the social gathering, the celebration of life, in which we refer to powwow, it's there for as a result of a lot of hard work of people in their local communities. And as a Ayapaha, we try to express that without bragging on them, without the committees I'm talking about, the committees, without bragging on them or all the efforts they put into keeping the thing together, generating some funds, soliciting funds, going to local businesses and kind of soliciting items from them for their giveaways or whatever the case may be. And then the families themselves, kind of for a whole year, they'll keep things. They'll keep blankets, they'll keep goods, they'll keep stuff that can be used practically, like pots and pans and utensils, watecha, we call it watecha stuff, where you get that Tupperware stuff. And then at the powwow, they're afforded an opportunity to the ones that have gone to the other side, or relatives that have gone to the other side, they memorialize them. But people don't understand how much work and effort it goes in with the collaborative effort of the powwow committee and the family coming together, and the family offering tobacco and asking, can we have our memorial at this time on this date? And they say, okay, yeah, and they schedule you in, and all that administrative work that needs to be done to put the powwow together. The agenda's got to be brought forward. They got to get host drum. They got to get Ayapahas. They got to get arena director, and then the powwow committee's got to make themselves available for changes that come about. The powwow committee makes those changes. We as Ayapahas, we express their concerns to the people so they know what's going on, and kind of a conveyance of that. And then the arena director just kind of facilitates that whole thing. So that's how the Apahan, the arena director, work together based on the concerns or the issues that the committee would like to bring forward and get taken care of. And so we do that. And so it takes a lot of work to put one of these gatherings together. And it's all based on respect. Respect of the drum, the heartbeat of our Mother Earth, respect on the dancers who adorn themselves in their finest regalia and present themselves to all the audiences there. The audience also has a responsibility to participate and get involved and to really encourage the dancers to stay out there, because one of the hardest things to do is to become a dancer, and that's to share with people the the expression of these emotions that you have, and maintaining the beat to the heartbeat of our Mother Earth through the drum. And then the hochapi, they provide that melody, that song, so that we can understand. And that they used to all be straight songs, but now they're incorporating words. And when we listen to the words and the importance of what it is that they're sharing for the sake of this collaborative effort of the drum, the singers, and the dancers, for our sake, it's good to see all the colors, all the beautiful colors, the movement. It's good for our ears, the beautiful melodies that we hear, the heartbeat of our Mother Earth, we hear that. And then the connection that our dancers maintain as it relates to the Mother Earth. And you can see that they dance in a respectful way on Mother Earth by sharing their stories as they understand it. The grass dancers have a shared story that they do. The traditional dancers have their shared story. And of course, the fancy dancers, they have their story, but their battle is between the drum and the dancer. So it's quite competitive in nature in that regard as well. Now, I'm speaking about powwow. And so we need to remember some of the origins of powwow. It was just for the warriors. When the warriors returned, they wanted to share with the people um, these brave acts. Wapaha, although we refer to that as the flag, it also can be defined as your brave deeds, your courageous deeds, Wapaha. If you think about it, it could be interpreted as that, but we contemporarily refer to it as a flag. And so when the traditional dancers get on the floor, they're wishing originally they would come in and they would show the people and keep in time with the music and keep in time with the heartbeat of our Mother Earth. They would share a story. They would show the people how they ducked, how they got down real low, how they maintained that stealthful sort of a way of approaching the enemy. And then as they got to their enemy, how they counted coup, not kill, how they counted coup on their enemy. And in that, their face was painted a certain way that designated who that warrior was. And that was a case of identity. And then the beadwork that he wore usually was beadwork of his family. And so they knew who he was, what family he came from, and again, what tribe he was a part of. And so when they identified you in that way, the one that you counted coup on, that you bonked him in the head with your coup stick, he had went back, had a big bump on his head. And then they would tell stories on who did that. And then these stories would go around Indian country about these fierce warriors, and they would identify them based on their paintings of their face. And so, some of these things, as it relates to the stories of origin, like it was just for men. Powwow was just for men because they would share their stories. The women would stay back and take care of the family, the teepee, and manage the homes. But the men would go out and they'd protect, or they would provide. If they were coming back from a hunting excursion, and they'd sing certain songs, and they'd be happy songs if they had good luck, or they'd be kind of mournful songs if they didn't have good luck. But in most cases, they had good luck because they were good hunters. They were very good at what they did. And so, for the sake of the survival of the people, the warriors would come back and they would show through the heartbeat of our Mother Earth, how these individuals acquired their feathers. Because each time they did something courageous and brave, they were adorned with a feather, an eagle feather that we held in high esteem. And so the feathers that they carried on their bustle or on their regalia, in their hair or whatever, had definite meaning and purpose. And if you'll notice, not long ago, the grass dancers, it was the society of young boys, 18 and under. And if you'll notice, their regalia didn't have feathers. They had plumes, eh? They had plumes because they were never given an opportunity to acquire a feather based on a brave act or brave deed. But they were the ones that were on the ground. They were the scouts. They were probably the most important aspect of protecting the tribe than all of them. And of course, it was a very stringent, very hard, enduring society to get into. So all the young men would aspire to getting into that society, the grass dance society. And they were the scouts. They were the ones on the ground. My uncle told me that the grass dancers are the ones on the ground. The ones with feathers, the warriors, they're the one on horseback. Eh? So the scouts would go out and they were so stealthful that when they would go out, they would just go out with their breechcloth on, no shirt, no nothing in their hair, no adornments, just their bare feet, not even moccasins, eh? And the reason for that was they couldn't be seen, heard, or even smelled. So they would make sure that in their stealthful manner that they were disciplined enough in their character to protect the people, because it wasn't for them. It wasn't trying to be somebody. It was understanding their responsibility to the tribe based on the information that they acquired in their stealthful scouting that they would bring back to the warriors. And of course, they would go out and they would pursue buffalo herds or elk herds or whatever. And they couldn't be seen, but they would know where they're at, and they'd come back and they'd tell the people. Or if they were out scouting, they would know how many of the enemy, be it another tribe or Mila Huska, they call them, the Americans, the cavalry. They would let them know how many men they were and all that good stuff. And I remember one time this colonel, he had a big old platoon of soldiers, or he was a general, eh? And so they said, their two scouts went out and said, there's Indians right over that hill. I said, okay, well, okay, we'll send out a squad of our army men. Go and get them and bring them back. And so they went, the squad, 5 guys went out. You heard all this screaming and hollering and shooting and everything else. And pretty soon they seen one army guy dragging himself back, all tore up. His coat was tore. He was stabbed in a couple of places. He said, oh, General, it's too much. It's too bad. They got the rest of them, but I got back. You need to send out more. So the general said, okay, well, we'll send out a platoon. And that's about 40 or 50 guys, eh? So the general sends 50 guys out there and they go over the hill. Oh, cray, this big old war broke out. They heard all this screaming and fighting and all this crying and hurt and agony and pain going on over the hill. Here, finally, one of the guys comes back and comes crawling back. He's all tore up. He doesn't know what to do. And so he says, oh, man, General, we're going to have to send out more. How come? Why? What's going on? How many of them are there? There's 2 of them. That's how fierce the Sioux are. But anyway, that's another story. But I just thought I'd throw that in there just for a little bit of a understanding of how fierce and how dependent some of our scouts were. So the grass dancers were very capable of protecting themselves. A couple of things that just in my understandings of some of the things that how they were evaluated, I guess you would say, in respects to having the ability to be a grass dancer and be a participant in that grass dance society, is they would give you tests or challenges. And one of the tests was you had to go step on a skunk's tail. Okay. And you figure, well, what purpose does that serve? But in nature, if you know, when a skunk gets excited, what does it do? It sprays, right? But a skunk can't spray if you step on its tail, you see? And so you had to get up to the skunk, not scare him, but keep him from spraying by holding his tail down. So that was one of the tests. And if you could do that, then you were disciplined enough uh, um, be stealthful enough to sneak up on the skunk and hold its tail down so he doesn't let the enemy know that, oh, somebody's in our area, somebody's here, by spraying. When you smelled skunk, you know something was up, eh? And so that's the reason for that. Also, another test, another challenge was you had to go up to a badger. And for those of you that know what a badger is, very fierce animals. They, holy crap, they're really wicked. They'll tear you up, man. But you had to sneak up to a badger and touch a badger on the nose. And the hardest part about that was the discipline it took to ease up to a badger while he's sleeping, crawl up to him, and these old people will be watching you, and you touch that badger on the nose. And of course, after you touch him on the nose, you run like hell so he couldn't catch you. But the point was you had to get up on the badger and touch him on the nose. And people often wondered, well, why is that so important? Well, that said a lot about your ability to maintain that stealthfulness as you pursued maybe scouting for the enemy or scouting for buffalo, because they're really scary buffalo. They run, they scare on any little thing, and so they couldn't see another human being, or they'd run. So they didn't want to scare them away. They just want to know where they're at. So they'd have to be hiding and all that, and that stealthfulness would come into being. And then, of course, the detection of uh, the scent of a skunk. You couldn't even let them know you were around in that area. If they smelled skunk, they knew there was a disturbance somewhere, and they would have to go check it out. So they would do that. So those were just a couple of tests that the grass dancers, the scouts, would have to go through just to prove their worthiness to belong to a grass dance society. And then, of course, when the grass dancers would come in to the powwow, they would always come in their hierarchy. Eh? The main one would come first, and all of the rest would follow. And so the ones that were the strongest scouts, they would enter the arena first. And then the ones that were still in training or learning, that were part of that society, would come in at the tail end, so that they. The reason I say that, and I share that with you, is because, you know, in the beginning of the powwow nowadays, we kind of follow the ways of the rodeo, having grand entry, and people think we come in to show off. That's not the case at all. What they're doing is they're coming in and they're affording the people that are in the audience, and this is the responsibility of the audience, affording the people an opportunity to recognize these individuals that are representing their Tioshbe or their Tiwahe. Because usually in every family, there's usually one that will take on those characteristics as a dancer, or somebody that shares. Nowadays, there's usually one in the bunch that kind of really pursues that identity thing through dance. But when they present themselves in a grand entry, they're not showing off. What they're doing is they're affording the audience an opportunity to recognize these individuals that are strong enough to become, be in front of people and express themselves and share that emotion that they're feeling through song and dance. Because it's a very hard thing to do, as passive as Indian people are in our character. That's extremely hard thing to do. And so you'll see when they come in grand entry, that's what they're doing. They're letting you identify them as somebody that if you're in need, they will help you. They have the abilities to help you. And so when the grass dancers would come in, they'd come in that hierarchical sort of positioning, so you could identify who is the strongest or the better scout and whatnot, and you could depend on them to help you. in your time of need. Same thing. Or when we procession people around when we're in a memorial or something, we like for you to identify those individuals that are in mourning. That's why they're staying back. That's why they're not involved in how they used to be. So we didn't talk about them in a bad way. We understood their opportunity to be somewhat in a different state of mind as a result of their chante yoksucha omani. They're walking around with a very mournful heart. So their mind was elsewhere. It wasn't in a bad place. It was something we refer to as a spiritual energy, wakhan. It was in a wakhan state of mind because of the loss of their loved one. That their mind wasn't right. So when somebody used to lose a loved one, there was the Society of Ladies that would go over to their house, and they wouldn't even ask. They would just go in. They'd start cooking. They'd start cleaning. They'd do the laundry, and as personal as some of those things are, these ladies of the society would do that for the person that was in mourning because they, again, understood they weren't in their right mind. They couldn't make those decisions. They couldn't even feed themselves. They couldn't cook for themselves because their mourning was so tough. And so the little group of ladies would go in there and they would take care of them, initially, and just let them know that we're here for you. And when you're in mourning, people used to bring food to you. The people would cook in the camp and they'd go and make some for the person in mourning, and they would go set it on their doorstep. Wouldn't bother them, just set it on their doorstep and they would go, because they knew that person would not cook for themselves because of their state of mind. Their mind was in that, filled with that spiritual energy, and they were over at what they wanted to be where their relative was on the other side. And so that was kind of how things were dealt with in that way. But in the celebration of life, when you process them, when there's a procession of them around, they want the audience to recognize them, not to show them off, but to let the people see these folks are very honorable and they're dignified, and they had a great love for their relatives. So now they're having a memorial song, Wokiksia Oluwan, they call it, a remembrance song for them because of the love that they had for their relation that has since gone to the other side. And then what that also does, it helps us to dispel that fear of that mystery of death. Celebration of life, eh? Why are these people dancing when they're in mourning? Well, they didn't go to the dance during that year of mourning, Nagi Gluhapi. They stayed away. And now they're coming back into the circle and the people are welcoming them in spite of that loss. So there was a respect that was indicated in that manner in which we did things. But life has to go on. We still have to adapt and adjust to some of these ways. And so Nagi Gluhapi, the keeping of that spirit, would usually be done just by one individual of the family, and they would stay back in that representation. They wouldn't comb their hair, they wouldn't wear jewelry, they wouldn't take care of themselves. They would keep themselves clean, but just the indication of they were in a state of mourning. They wouldn't talk or bother people, wouldn't say nothing, and they would just stay back in representation of that. And the people would look after that individual that was doing that. They would feed them and take care of them, make sure they cleaned up and whatnot. But they let them wear their hair out, and they didn't bring them jewelry or anything like that. They didn't adorn themselves trying to make themselves look better, and they would wear dark clothing. And the older ladies back in the day, they'd always wear scarves. And the reason they wore the scarf was because they cut their hair for their lost relatives. And so they would have these scarves on, and people could never understand why the older ladies always wore scarves. The men wouldn't cut their hair because, you see, a lot of the men had long braids because we felt that was our spiritual connection through our hair. But the women already had that connection. They were born with it, so they could cut their hair because they always maintained that spiritual connection every 28 days with the spirit world. And so in that was that understanding That's why the women would cut their hair when the men wouldn't, to indicate the mourning process. And then the old ladies would wear their scarves and wear dark clothing at that time. But anyway, the celebration of life is to help us understand the importance of the honorings of our young people. Powwow affords us an opportunity to honor our young. And if you understand the story of Owl Dance, that was initially brought about for the sake of our young people. That was an opportunity for an auntie to get up there and go pay the committee $5, $10 and say, I want to speak about my niece and all the good things she's doing. And so the committee had let her, and so the lady would get up there and she'd start talking about all the accomplishments her niece did. And then she'd call her niece down and stand here and let people, not showing her off, not bragging on her per se, but letting people know this is what this young lady has accomplished already in her young life based on her teachings. And so the audience, again, their responsibility is to recognize that young lady. And then what the auntie would do is say, okay, that young man that's with her, come down here and we're going to have you dance with her. And all her friends come and dance behind her. And so that was a dance for the young people so that we could acknowledge some of their accomplishments in respect to what they did. And then, of course, the uncles would get in there, pay the committee money, and talk about their nephew. The nephew would come down and his girlfriend, they'd invite the girlfriend down, and they'd have the dance, the owl dance, that Gahominy style beat they referred to as the owl dance. But again, that's where these things are started, and the intent of the powwow was not to be a place to show off, but it was a place to, in respects to the fancy dancers, compete with the drums. In respects to the grass dancers and the traditional dancers, they would share their stories of their brave, courageous acts on the battlefield or hunting or whatever the case may be. Or in the grass dancers' case, the scouting, how they kabadabadecha wachipedo, and you interpret that as you're dancing all flexible, eh? In other words, you're breaking up that silhouette of the human body, and then when they would return, they would be camouflaged. They have sticks in their hair, grass on their places to break up that silhouette of a human being. So they couldn't, that was a part of their stealthfulness or their activities that they did as they went out and camouflaged themselves. So in that respect, that's where the grass dance came from. And they'd come back with grass all over them because they wanted to break up the silhouette of the human being. And they would share that in a good way. Kind of some of the things there. So it wasn't so much to show off as it was to share a story of what it is that they did. And in that process of sharing that story, guess who was watching? The young people. And then they would know, oh, I could do this, I could do that, I can do that, and I can. And then the traditional dance, the men's traditional dance, used to be judged based on how low you can go. Kuchialo, going real low, eh? Going real low. And the lower you got, the better, and still maintain movement, still keeping your bells in time with the drum, and still maintain movement and going low. Used to be how it was the judging was done, because the lower you went, the better protected you were, the better stealth, the more better you were at sneaking up on your enemy. And so kind of like that. And you know, that's sad that the powwow has gone in a perspective and going in the direction to where they're losing sight of the beginnings, the origins of why we do what we do, and now they just kind of do it any old way and without reference to the origins. And of course, the ladies categories came in after the fact. I remember Gladys Jefferson was one of the first ladies fancy shawl, and I think there was a first raised woman from Fort Belknap was right with her at that time, and introduced the ladies fancy shawl, a little bit more fancier steps and all that good stuff. But it evolved into that to where it became a family affair. I remember back in the day, in the 80s or something like that, they were trying to get rid of that golden age and the tiny tot categories, just so they could get done earlier, so they get to the bars before it closed. But they, instead of getting rid of them, they said, no, the people got together, we're going to acknowledge them. We're going to identify them as a category. So they made a tiny tot category and they made a golden age category. And so whatever those young people that were trying to get done early so they could go to the bar did, it just made it, they added to the program. And so again, if we let it evolve into something negative, I'm sure it will be. So we have to really be aware of who's guiding us, who's leading us down these roads. And if we can't maintain the sense of origin to why we do what we do, not to show off or not to do it for money, but lechamualo, you know, that if they understand that, then they'll realize they're not doing it for themselves, they're doing it for the people. And then they start to realize that their purpose and their dedication as it relates to that experience of participating in the powwow is not to show off, but it's there to express yourself as it relates to how you feel from the inside out in an emotional way. Yeah? Oh man, of course the support being the beadwork and all the stuff that you wear is a part of your representation of the people that give it. Like my regalia, my whole regalia, my wapesha, my beadwork, everything was given to me. It was just given to me. And so when I danced for a representation of many, many families. And so therefore I always tried to be respectful to those families and carry myself in a dignified, honorable way, not for my sake, but for the sake of those people that shared this opportunity for me to dance. Right? So again, that seems to be going by the wayside because they're getting caught up in chasing that dollar again, as opposed to holding on to our basic fundamental origins of why we gather like that. Eh? There's so many positive aspects about powwow, knowing who your relatives are, making new relatives. We don't address our wealth based on materialism. We address it on how many relatives we have. Eh? And so we make relatives when we travel, and the appreciation of all of our kolas. You don't just call anybody your friend. There has to be a definite connection there for them to be your kola or your koda or your kona. And so respecting those sorts of things is what powwow affords you an opportunity to establish for the sake of this diversity that is out there. And powwow does give us an opportunity to be diverse. Many, many, many tribes come together, different values, different ways, all that, but they come together under the auspice of powwow. And in that process, they have a very positive celebration of life. Powwow has evolved into a drug and alcohol-free gathering to where there's a lot of prayers being said, a lot of respect being shared, a lot of protocol being followed. And again, it's hard to be an Indian, but I love my Indian way, sort of a thing, because of the patience, the disciplines that is needed as we are afforded an opportunity to exercise these virtues that we try so hard to work on. That's why I said initially, powwow affords you an opportunity to really check out how strong you are as it relates to some of those virtues that I spoke about. What do you think about that, Toshka?
That was really informative, very interesting. I did have one question. I wasn't sure. I'm sure that's probably you addressed it in there somewhere, but over the years I've either heard, it's been a while, but I remember hearing one of the possible origins of grass dance was you know, Ahana, you know, before contemporary powwow and committees and judges and all this stuff, there was just natural grass everywhere, high grass. And so one of the first things they would send people out in, the young men, was to respectfully clear out a campsite area. Is that just folklore? Is that something that you've heard as well?
That's true. That was one of the responsibilities of the scouts. flatten the grass. And the reason for that, they would flatten it and get rid of the snakes.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
So you see, so that's true. That's a part of that responsibility of the scouts. So when they go into a new area, they would flatten the grass if that's where everybody wanted to camp, and they would do it like that. Is that cool or what?
Yeah, yeah. Really chill, atacho. And then
Oh,
they
that's
would even
good.
tie grass on their arms and their legs. And now we're, one of the criticisms is they're yarn dancers, but I think that's still just that they're replicating
Yeah,
what
symbolism.
the
Yeah,
grass used to be. Yeah,
symbolism. Yeah, it's symbolizing the grass because again, it was put there as camouflage to break up the human body form. Eh?
yeah,
You, you see, because again, if you're walking on a horizon and um, uh, and somebody looks and they see you walking like a human, you look like a human. Well, there's a human being. Go get him. But if you got grass hanging all over you and you stop and you're kind of all gabba-dabba-dacha, kind of all flexible, and they can't tell it's a human. They think it's a tree or bush or something. You see what I'm saying?
yeah, for
It was
sure.
a part of that understanding nature, understanding what would make it. And you very seldom see a grass dancer on the ridge of a hill. They wouldn't go there because they know they'd be easily detected. Eh? But in some cases that happened, but they would still be ready for that. You know, the grass dancers at one time were so good at what they did. When a grass dancer was lost, they would sing songs. We'll never find him. And see the breechcloth that they carried, they were long. They were very long breechcloth with fringes at the bottom. And because when they crouched down and when they walked, the fringes or the back breechcloth would cover their tracks. Okay,
Mm.
is that cool or?
That's really cool. I remember looking at some of those old photographs, whether it's Creek Country, Dakota, or wherever. There's look like the chicken dancers.
Yeah,
It was a little different, but they didn't have all the same regalia. I guess things change, but sometimes it looked like they'd almost be wearing like pajamas. Some of them would be just chonana, like practically naked with just some basic things, some bells and a couple of those I don't know if they were like plumes in the back,
mhm.
but um there's a few dancers every once in a while I've seen that still do that, but it seems like that's kind of a something that's probably fading away, eh?
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
That's just the way the style they dance now is all contemporary. It's not like it used to be, eh? But that's as a result of that evolvement, eh? The ability to adorn things, make it really look show now, eh? Really
Yeah,
looking good, and like the big old porcupine roaches. Oh my God. Can you imagine buying a porcupine roach for $5,000? God, my car is not even worth that much.
yeah, big money, that's for sure.
That's
Pretty
one of the things that was hard for me to give away. I had to give away my roach, eh? And I gave all my stuff away after my boys Nagig Lahapi was done. I did all these ceremonies, and one of it was giving my stuff, which I gave all my hardest thing to give away was my roach. Oh, that's a dandy roach.
yeah,
Oh man, but I love my son, of course. So yeah,
yeah.
part
And
of it.
then yeah, I was gonna say one other, I guess, question. Um, our contemporary powwow system, how long do you think that's been around? About 100, 150 years? mid 1800s, late 1800s? Because
Wow.
I guess where I'm getting at was I think there's probably, they've always danced, right? But like just to, with the reservation era, just to like continue to dance publicly.
Well, prior to what we see now, it was probably more ritual than anything.
Mm,
You see,
mhm.
it was just a private um, opportunity for that society to come in, warrior society. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because we're established societies, and they would come in and they would share how they did this, how they did that, da da da. And so it was probably more ritual, and it evolved into the celebration of life. Eh? And remember now, it was against the law till what 1968 or something like that, when the Indian Religious Freedom Act, whenever that came about, 72 maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Not too long ago.
yeah, it's not too long ago. So what you recognize now is the involvement of powwow to where it's actually legal to do that. And then you hear about these powwows that have been gone on for hundreds of years, and the reason that is because in spite of it being against illegal or whatever, the Indians would still have it, and the white people would let the Indians do it because the white people's perception of our powwow gatherings, oh, they're just getting drunk and it's just a grab ass thing, not recognizing what we were doing, eh? And from a mental health perspective, we were maintaining our dignity and our honor for the sake of the integrity of who we are as a people. So there was rituals involved in that gathering. It wasn't a party, but the white people thought it was a grab ass party. And so therefore, I still remember to this day, some of the powwow singers down here at the oil celebration, they'd have their drum, then they'd have a half gallon sitting right beside it.
Oh, gee.
Drinking, singing, drinking. I remember my older brother telling me, he said, yeah, I used to come down to oil celebration. And if you got picked on Friday, you didn't have to dance until Sunday, eh? He said, yeah, I was passed out over here. I still had my regalia on. I got picked, and so I didn't have to dance till Sunday. So shit, I went with the boys, and we were still drinking. The next morning, I woke up, still had my bustle on, my roach on. I was laying in the weeds. I said, but they let us do it. That's how, because that's what they perceived us as, eh? Like we're heathenistic pagans. We didn't know what we were doing, and so they let us do it, so to speak. But they didn't really recognize the ritual aspect of what else was going on at powwow, right? You see? And so now it's become to where it's drug and alcohol free, a lot of protocol being followed, a lot of respect. And that's why I just kind of disheartened a little bit about when powwow came back, that I was wishing they would really slow down and really establish some of these basic fundamental things, but again, they went right back into people compromising their dignity for the sake of money and all that good stuff. That's not fair.
What do you think about this? You see it on Facebook. That's like a social, like these social distancing powwows. Have you seen much of those? Where people dance individually?
That's how I was entertaining myself through that whole thing. I'd get on YouTube and I'd watch it, and I think I participated in a couple of them as an announcer, eh? But I thought that abided our time as it relates to wanting to continue on that whole aura of powwow, eh? Got to listen to the singers. They'd get together and they'd sing, and then people would dance, and then they'd have judges involved. Just kind of. I don't know how you'd say it, but just kind of. But they wanted me to get more involved, but I didn't know. That wasn't just my thing. So I think I did one powwow like that, and I didn't want to. That was good enough for me, because I just, it wasn't my thing. It wasn't face to face. It wasn't wasn't satisfying my yearn for powwow.
Old school, yeah.
But it served its purpose. It did good. It really did well. Got people involved.
Cool. Let's see how much time I got. About 5 minutes. For those of you joining us on Facebook, again, give us a like, give us a share. That's how you get your name in the hat for next week's drawing for a jacket and Kindle Fire. If you have any questions, try and put them in that comment section. We'll do our best to address those. Anybody that's on the Zoom call, just put any questions that you have in the chat. We'll be here for a few more minutes, but while we're here and while we're waiting, I did, maybe it's a good idea that we, again, share the podcast Buffalo Chasers playlist on our YouTube channel at Fort Peck Community College. This is what it looks like. We got all 42 of them loaded up, going back a Hana to last year. So if you want to check them out at your leisure, you know where to go. Here's the URL right up here. And we also have them on Apple Podcast, Google Podcasts, and Spotify for the audio versions. And then also we have a quilling workshop next week. I think Tuesday and Wednesday. Get a hold of me if you're interested in that. We have limited spacing available. And then that'll be at the Greet the Dawn auditorium, tentatively, depending upon how many people show up. Totally free, completely free, from 9 to 3 p.m. Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. And then the following week on the 9th and 10th, I believe we got a drum making workshop. So our co-host, Earl Bullhead, who's unavailable today, but he will be facilitating that. He'll be over here in Wakchinja Wakpa in Poplar. So we'll, if you're interested in learning how to make the drum and all its parts and the history of it, come check it on out. Again, we have limited spacing. So let me know if you're interested. Shoot me an email, ehopkins@fpcc.edu, or give us a call, 768-6370, to reserve your spot. So everyone is welcome. But pretty much, Dexy, that's all I had to cover as far as announcements. I know your world, you have just all kinds of experience with Wachipi powwow as a Yapaha. You over this past year or so, we've touched on it. The past couple podcasts, you and Earl have explained a lot for individuals like myself as far as the history and origins and some of those protocols. So that's really interesting. It sounds like maybe we'll even discuss a little bit of individual categories moving forward, kind of maybe how they developed, maybe the nuances as far as like how they're maybe a slightly different and how they evolved.
Oh yeah, for sure. And see, that's what we're leading into, Toshka. That's why I wanted to give you, like, we got a little history about the drum, little history about powwow this time, and then maybe next week or next couple of weeks we can go into the particular categories, because there's history on each and every one of them, eh? And there's stories that follow them, and the purpose of how and why they do things like that. So yeah, and what it does, it helps people understand we're just not doing these things arbitrarily. These things are done for a reason, for a purpose, and we try to maintain that, as we sustain it through our activities, through our involvement and all this stuff. So there's definitely a way of life that a lot of people haven't had the opportunity to be able to respect, and again, they grew to fear it because they didn't know that, they didn't understand what we were doing, eh? And so that's just a humanistic thing, to where you fear that what you don't understand. So we're bringing forward some understanding to help them realize that, hey, it's not wrong, it's just different. And our ability to accept that diversity is first and foremost, and is key in the representation of Buffalo Chaser society, eh?
Oh, hit you too.
Na Ushimalo na Pasumi na Wamayaza.
Oh, yeah. Relatives, we're at the end of the podcast here. Thank you for joining us. One quick shout out. We do have fall 21 registration is open. So if you're interested in becoming an official Buffalo Chaser, come and register, take some classes. We have almost 30 some degrees to choose from, degrees and programs. Classes start August 30th. And I believe August 25th is virtual new student orientation. So we'll have this type of platform. We'll get a few other individuals from student services. We'll invite all the students that are already registered to a Zoom call. We'll stream it live on Facebook from about 9 to about noon or so. So check us out there if you're interested. But again, August 30th classes start. So we want to definitely welcome everybody to join the Buffalo Chaser Society in a good way. So anything else, Dex? Are we good for today? Oh, all right. Watch the do. Doksta kewa cheka mitake pia petu washte yuhapo.
Oh, chicken.
Hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ya hey yo hey yo hey yo hey ha ya hey ya hey ya hey Hey ha ya 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 hey ha yo hey yo hey yo. Fort Beck Community College Ukiepino yo yo me too gashi dagush kashka yogi piano yo yo wata pevi agik tabi ichachi ya bino hey yo hey yo. Hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ya hey ha yo hey yo hey yo hey ha ya hey ya yo hey ha yo hey yo hey yo hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ha ya hey hey yo. Fort Beck Community College Ukiepino yo yo me too gashi dagush kashka yogi piano